Well, there are draft experts, and then there are draft experts, and Matt Miller from Bleacher Report has put together the entire 7-round draft, and he joins us now from his base in Joplin. Matt, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, you bet, guys. Thank you.
I think Chiefs fans would be satisfied if it went the way that you've laid it out here. Tackle, quarterback, defensive end, wide receiver. You've addressed really all the Chiefs' needs. Fans want to know who the Chiefs are going to take number one with that first pick, and who do you have them taken?
Well, as of right now, before free agency, I think Luke Joeckel, the left tackle from Texas A&M, is that top guy on the board. Best overall player in this year's draft, so it's easy to slot him in there as the number one pick. Obviously, that could change depending on what happens with Brandon Albert, what happens with the quarterback position in free agency. But as of now, he looks like the top guy, and you know, they would really be upgrading the position, I think, with Joeckel in there at left tackle.
No qualms for you taking an offensive tackle with that number one pick. As you say, it depends on what happens with Brandon Albert. There could be a need, obviously, at that position. And is he head and shoulders above everybody else in this draft right now?
You know, he really is. I think that Joeckel's head and shoulders even above a lot of his peers in former drafts. I mean, he's just such an athlete at the position. You know, left tackles haven't traditionally gone number one overall. Just 4 of them have gone, I think, in the last 50 years. So it's not real common. But when they do, they make big impacts. You know, guys like Orlando Pace, Jake Long before injury. There's some great left tackles who have gone number one overall. And I think Joeckel fits that mold as being the type of player the NFL teams need right now with this pass-heavy offenses that we're seeing. He's the prototypical new left tackle.
I think Chiefs fans would be great with that pick as long as you could guarantee him a quarterback there in the second round. And you've got Ryan Nassib from Syracuse, a guy that a lot of people see as a possible first-rounder, maybe falling into the second round for the Chiefs. And I don't think that if the draft goes like this, it couldn't work out any better for a Chiefs fan, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. If Nassib is there, number 34, I think you've played the draft pretty well. You know, he's a guy who, like you said, could go up into the first round, could still be in there in the second round. It will all depend on which teams fill their needs at quarterback through free agency, and then which teams decide to go after quarterbacks in the draft. You know, Nassib could be the second quarterback off the board. There's even some chance he could be the first quarterback off the board. It's such a weird year for quarterbacks, but he's a talented player, a big-armed quarterback who I think would fit well in Andy Reid's scheme. He's an underrated athlete, has some mobility to get outside of the pocket, and he just makes throws really well on the run or standing in the pocket. So he's a guy who, if not a starter this year, is definitely someone who would be looked at as a future starter.
We've heard good things about him. The only thing that scares me, his former coach, now the coach of the Buffalo Bills, who need a quarterback as well. Would there be a temptation there to grab a guy that you knew from college and that you had coached previously? You
know, that's definitely something that's being speculated about, and it's tough to know if Doug Marrone will want to go get his old quarterback. You know, Pete Carroll has kind of systematically stayed away from USC guys since he took the Seattle Seahawks job. So you never really know if that familiarity is a positive or a negative, and that's something that will definitely play out here over the next 3 months, is seeing whether the Bills like Nassib since they do know him, or if they know him so well that they're going to go somewhere else at that position.
Exactly. All right, in the third round, you've got Bennie Logan, defensive end out of LSU. Obviously, the Chiefs can use some help along the defensive line. What do you like about him?
I like Logan as a 5-technique defensive end in that 3-4 defense. You know, they're going to lose 2 other guys from LSU most likely. Glenn Dorsey is a free agent, and Tyson Jackson with his huge salary cap. I think Logan's a guy who could come in and play early on. I mean, you would obviously want to supplement that with a veteran in free agency, maybe someone like Chris Canty, who could come in and anchor on the other side. But Logan's a good athlete, and much like some of the 3-4 DNs we're seeing in the NFL now, he can actually get upfield and pressure the quarterback as well. He's not a stable player who can't move around a little bit. So I think Logan around 3 is a good, safe value and someone who could come in and play early.
All right, in the fourth round, you've got Cobi Hamilton, a wide receiver out of Arkansas. The Chiefs obviously have a need out there as well. Does he fit into this West Coast type style of offense?
Yeah, I think he's a great fit here. The strength to Hamilton's game is that he's a big body who can kind of box out defensive backs. Not exceptionally fast, but he'll do some things after the catch. But with that size and strength off the line of scrimmage, he's great for those underneath routes, the quick slants, the digs that are such a staple in that West Coast offense. So he's really a good fit for what Andy Reid wants to do.
Let me take you into the draft in general. If indeed the Chiefs maybe work out a deal where they drop down or they decide to go quarterback for some reason in that number 1 pick, can you rank the quarterbacks for me right now, the guys that you like best coming off the board? In what order you like the quarterbacks?
Well, I like Geno Smith as the first quarterback to come off the board. I don't like him as the number 1 overall pick, but it's probably a first rounder. Then I have Ryan Nassib Matt Barkley and Tyler Wilson all grouped really closely together. I think that's going to fall to preference among the NFL teams, what type of player they're looking for. And then E.J. Manuel from Florida State as kind of a project there, probably in the third round. And then Mike Glennon from North Carolina State, really kind of an enigma at the quarterback position. Some people love him, have him in the first round. I've talked to other teams who have him in the seventh round. So he's really a polarizing player who has a big arm and can get the ball downfield, but not really a fit for what Kansas City wants to do.
I think Barkley is really kind of an intriguing quarterback in that he was such the talk before the season started, and then he dropped like a rock throughout the season. It seemed his draft stock. Can he rebuild that now through the offseason, through his pro day? And is there a chance that maybe he makes a jump up above these other quarterbacks at some point?
Well, I think at this point anything can happen, and Barkley will have a good opportunity, assuming he throws at the NFL scouting combine here in a few weeks. He'll have an opportunity to impress teams and scouts. You saw on film this year kind of a weak-armed quarterback who struggled to make decisions outside of his first read. So I think Barkley would have some trouble beating that perception, but he's a really great kid. He's going to interview exceptionally well. So I think there is a possibility that he's going to impress a team. They're going to see him as a fit within their individual scheme, and he could be one of those guys who gets overdrafted a little bit.
A lot of the guys that we've talked to, like Tyler Wilson as well, because of his arm strength. What do you see out of him?
Well, he does. He has a big, strong arm. I worry with Wilson about a few things. I mean, he's a bit undersized, which isn't as much of a concern these days as it used to be. But he's had 2 concussions in just 2 years as a starter at Arkansas, so that's always a concern. And then it just looks at times like he's forcing the ball. It doesn't have great accuracy or good control on where his passes are going. So Wilson definitely has a big arm. He's really strong and tough in the pocket. But I don't know that he can get much better than what we've seen at Arkansas.
Give me a couple of your sleepers, whether it's in the quarterback position or another spot in the draft that maybe we keep our eye on, a guy that's not getting a lot of attention now that you really like.
Well, I think at quarterback, a guy I really like would be Matt Scott out of Arizona. A really good athlete, kind of a smaller guy, 6'2", 200 pounds, but can move around, does a great job manipulating the ball. I think he has underrated accuracy and could be someone a few years down the road who steps in and becomes a big-time playmaker. So this is a weak quarterback class, so we're looking for someone to come in and kind of surprise everyone, and I think Matt Scott could be that guy.
The success that quarterbacks had last year in their rookie seasons and guys that maybe didn't have the prototypical size, does that open the eyes of scouts and maybe general managers a little bit to take another look at a guy that maybe, as you would maybe at first dismiss for not having the size or the arm strength, but maybe he does something a little bit better, maybe he's a little bit more mobile, that these other quarterbacks that have had success early on, that may help them in the draft now? Yeah,
definitely. I think that we as evaluators have to have open minds a little bit more. Russell Wilson and Robert Griffin III kind of blew the doors off a lot of the old preconceptions that we have about playing quarterback. But not only just size. Russell Wilson had one of the strongest arms in last year's class. He's also a very smart quarterback who knew that his height was a limitation, so he was able to do some things to open up the offensive line and find passing windows. So when looking at smaller quarterbacks, I don't think we will dismiss them as quickly, but try to dig deeper into their game and see if they do those little minute things that make them better quarterbacks and help them. The thing is, this is not one of those years where there's a small guy who is being pushed aside because he's a small quarterback. It's just overall not an exceptional year.
All right, a guy from kind of down in your area, I know that you've watched, is Sheldon Richardson. Where do you think he may end up in the draft?
Well, I think he could be a top 10 player, and I would say top 15 would kind of be probably the bottom of where he would go. Just a phenomenal athlete on the defensive line. For a 300-pounder, he moves like a linebacker, a guy who has a great motor, really doesn't ever give up on the play, and I think teams are going to fall in love with his versatility on the defensive line, and he'll be someone drafted very early.
Matt Miller from Bleacher Report, we certainly appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
You bet, guys. Anytime.